Linux OTC. Welcome to episode 3. We're your hosts. I'm Bill.
I'm Norbert.
And I'm Leo.
Right. So I think, I don't know, I didn't have a huge lot of ideas for topics for today's show. It's been kind of a busy week, but I did want to, something I got to thinking about, and it was kind of as a result of listening to some Linux user space and some of the technologies you hear people talk about nowadays. Everything from your Dockers to, your other containerized technologies, Lexi, and then, all of the derivative stuff, the flat packs and the snaps and all that. And it occurred to me how different these conversations are from the conversations that we had about Linux 15 years ago or even 10 years ago. I guess what I'm getting at is where we are now is really impressive. And if you would have told somebody, if you would have told me 15 years ago that these are the things that we would be talking about, I would be really impressed, because in those days it was all about, hey, I got my Wi-Fi working on this laptop, but I'm still trying to get it to work on this laptop, and nowadays we're talking about building, containers and doing orchestration and things, and we're managing all of these different server workloads remotely, and just it feels magical. And of course, there's still no shortage of challenges left to be had, but where we are now is actually kind of impressive. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, 15 years ago, we were still dealing with RPM hell. And I think if you told me 15 years ago that we would still be talking about packaging because it wasn't fixed yet, I'd actually be pretty disappointed. Because it's the same conversation. We were having the same conversation 15 years ago, right? Like, not a lot has changed. And case in point, right? Somebody was asking on Mastodon, do you have any suggestions for a Debian desktop? Because I don't know which one to use, but there's a bunch of choice. And I had...
does Ubuntu also count as a Debian desktop?
Of course. No, it doesn't. In his case, it doesn't, because he was running Debian, so he wanted a desktop
Debian
to run
proper.
in Debian. Yeah, and so what I did was I responded to him with the original announcement of from Matthias Ettrich in 1996 of the announcement of the cool desktop environment, because he was making
common desktop environment.
No, cool, and
with a K.
Yeah, cool with a K.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
he was because he was making some joke about, I didn't say best Linux or best Debian desktop. I said coolest Debian desktop, right? So I said, here's the cool desktop. Is this cool enough for you? And I thought he was in on the joke. It was kind of funny because we ended up back and forthing a little bit, and it turned out 4 or 5 toots in, he was like, "Oh, that was a joke," because the opening of that sounds the exact same way. The conversations that we're having today about this is a new desktop, this is what we're planning on doing with it. It was the same exact conversation we were having in 1996, and it just kind of hit me. Is that progress? Have we actually progressed beyond where we were 15 years ago with RPM hell, or 25 years ago? Yeah, 25, 26 years ago. Deciding that cool desktop environment is the direction that we want to go.
Well, I think we are progressing, but some people might not see it because things are not progressing in the direction they would expect things to progress. For example,
the commercial direction.
Yeah, for example, the packaging thing, the nature of package management. Linux having package management is one of the most recognizable things about Linux. So even if from 5 years from now, everyone ends up using an immutable system that still is built from packages. So packaging will probably never go away. And Linux development and technologies in Linux are first and foremost driven by enterprise uses. And as far as I can tell, Linux has been used in enterprise 15 years ago. So has it been used for over 2 decades? I know it's been around for 30 years. I mean, Linux as a thing.
Linux?
Yeah. So have companies like Microsoft,
90s, right?
Microsoft or Amazon were they using Linux 20 years ago?
Oh, I think a lot of companies were, in the late 90s at least. A lot of companies were, but they didn't necessarily say it. Because it was a background appliance kind of thing. Like, it's running our web server. Why would we tell anybody that?
Well, it's still
they're certainly using open source software in those days.
Yeah.
Well, it still is in the background because people who are using Twitter or Netflix don't know that the content is being served probably being served from Linux server.
And that really should be okay. It's open source, right? So we're never going to be removed from this concept that somebody can come up with something new, and and because it's open source, it's right out there in the open being collaborated on, and it feels like something half-baked, and for some people, the interpretation might be that, well, because we have all of this stuff out here in the ecosystem that is perhaps not fit to task, that perhaps we're still kind of stuck in a I don't know, a beta stage or whatever, when in actuality it's just people. Not everybody has the skill set to make better the things that have the commercial imperative, I think. And so they come up with new desktop environments, or they come up with new things that don't work all that well, but it's something, new, and there's no barrier to entry except, your skill set. But I think in terms of reliability and usability, and the fact that, I don't know what the numbers are now, but as far as the server workloads on the internet, we pretty much completely dominated. I would.
What else would you use? It's exactly. The choice is not between Linux and Windows. The choice for running a web server is between like Caddy and Nginx and Apache on Linux.
Yeah.
Well, TrueNAS has a version that is based on FreeBSD.
Right. Oh, so yeah, and BSD would be another choice. Yeah, for sure.
And so as far as that goes, I think we've dominated. We've been dominated, and so now that's where the commercial imperative is. That's where the money from the companies, as it were. Now, I'm aware that some projects that are relied on heavily in that space don't necessarily get the love that they need. They don't get the support that they need. But
do you have an example? What do you mean?
Well, like OpenSSL and things like that.
Oh, I remember that. What was that? Heartbleed, right?
Yeah. And and then things like Log4j and stuff like that pop up, and it's all because these are low-level infrastructure projects that are being leaned upon by large corporations that are not donating back to the original project.
Well, not until they get screwed, and then they're like, oh, what do you mean $50,000 a year? We can afford that. Yeah, because the breach and the cleanup and the postmortem and everything else that they had to do cost more than $50,000. So they're like, that one's cheaper. We'll do the cheaper one. Thanks.
Though, to be fair, it's difficult to know how to feel about this, really, because it seems to me that the problem with funding open source is dealing with people's philosophical principles when it comes to taking money and the mechanisms by which they're willing to use. Because large corporations, if they're going to pay for something, if they're going to pay for a piece of infrastructure, they want to be able to invoice that and send it through accounts payable. That way they've got active records of these things getting paid. And some of these developers, I don't know, they want funded through, more altruistic means that corporations are just not willing, roads they're not willing to go down. So it's kind of difficult to know how to feel about it. And
I do see that if you're trying to make it difficult for people to pay you, then
yeah.
I mean, you're already kind of starting on the wrong foot. If your intention is to get paid for your work, because there's a lot of work out there that I don't think people care if they get paid for, because it's it's just a passion project or something for them.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're gonna go on Twitter and complain about being a starving artist, then you got to make it easy for people to pay you at least.
Yeah.
But I can totally see that, right? Because if you're working on free software, like free, not just free as in beer, free as in freedom software, then I mean, yeah, you're at a crossroads.
You are.
Do you use Patreon or something like that? That obviously uses a ton of non-free software. Does that cross your philosophical line? I don't think it should, but it does for some people. I think that's what you were getting at, right?
Well, yeah, and you're never going to get companies to pay you on Patreon. Or
that's
PayPal either. That's just never going to be a thing.
Yeah, when it comes to companies who rely on open source, but not everything they make is open source, I don't think they would have a problem with a non-open way of payment. But a lot of companies support projects not by financial means. They pay their employees to submit to contribute code to those projects.
Yeah.
How the Debian, a lot of the Debian contributors are Canonical employees. So Canonical, I assume they also give money to the Debian project, but they also just contribute code. But when there's an open source piece of project, I think TLS, the HTTPS protocol, might also be one of those that are maintained by a single person. Those are way easier for companies to overlook the need for contribution. And this culminates in things like various developers who are not compensated for their work, and the whole world is using their software, maybe dropping development or including something malicious in their code. So maybe it would be an easier way to just incentivize companies to provide code to projects and not just financial means, because if Google and Microsoft and Apple and Amazon can come together to contribute code to Linux kernel, there's nothing, as far as I'm aware, there's nothing preventing them from coming together in the same way to work on something else.
Don't contribute money, contribute code. Is that what you're getting at? These companies, at least?
Yeah, maybe that it would be easier to get the companies who are not willing to pay money to contribute money to contribute code instead.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know, man. Okay. I feel like if you're a company and you're using the software, man, if you're going to contribute code and money, how about that?
So how do we feel about things like Amazon? Well, how many years ago was it, the whole MongoDB thing?
Oh,
where
right.
they tried to change the licensing.
Around 2018 or so.
Yeah, and then Amazon's like, oh, okay, well, we're just going to fork you right into oblivion and maintain it ourselves.
I don't know what the license was on MongoDB, but if it was a free software license, obviously that's against the spirit of the license itself. But it, obviously wasn't against the letter of the license. So Amazon gets to do what they want, and if you, as a project, want to prevent that from happening, then it's got to be in the license. It is unfortunate, but that's what happens in a free software license sometimes.
It feels like that was a bit of a case where the developers were not inclined to work with. Well, I don't know if it was a case of them not wanting to work with Amazon to come up with a way of funding the project, or Amazon participating, or if it was just Amazon not wanting to work with the MongoDB team anymore. But that was an example of when the developers and the people using it can't come together. And Amazon, of course, they've got the resources to take it over and just run it themselves.
Yeah, because that was what was going on, right? Like Amazon was using it without contributing anything back, and then MongoDB decided to change the license to enforce that they actually give something back, and then Amazon was like, "Nah, we're just gonna fork it and leave. Thanks."
Yeah. But the fact that we have software that is good enough for a company like Amazon to use nowadays, I think is impressive, and it casts a huge shadow over anything, in my mind, any of the negative things about where we're at progressively with the Linux platform, and I got to thinking about that when I was listening to you and your co-host on Linux User Space. You guys were talking about Docker and Podman. You hadn't heard of Podman, and I didn't know that it was just a drop-in replacement, basically.
Yeah, I knew it had something to do with containers. I knew it was a Red Hat thing, but yeah, I didn't actually know that Podman. Yeah, as you say, just a drop-in replacement for the most part of Docker.
Basically, has the same syntax.
Yeah, the way I found out about Podman is I was interested in using DistroBox, and then I read up on it, and it says as a pre-requirement you have to install either Docker or Podman because they are sort of interchangeable as in terms of functionality. And I'm running Fedora, and I looked in the Fedora repos, and Docker wasn't there, only Podman. Later I found that it's probably because Podman is a Red Hat initiative project.
Right.
So I installed Podman, and I installed DistroBox on top of it. And at that point I hadn't used either Docker or Podman, and I still haven't used either one properly, only as a backend for DistroBox. But containerization is the magic word in the server space nowadays. And the reason I mentioned Linux on the server 1 or 2 decades ago, as compared to now, is that back then is how much the enterprise use itself has changed, because they used to just deploy huge servers, but now we have a bunch of little VMs. And is this what's called vertical scaling, right? Or horizontal?
Yeah,
one of them. Because
for people that are not fully aware, too, the entire shtick behind containerization in the server spaces, as time goes on and your tool chains change, your software gets upgraded, libraries get upgraded, this changes, that changes. You've really got 2 choices. You can either do like Windows does and maintain a ridiculous amount of backwards compatibility with everything, which creates spaghetti code, or you can create I can't think of a better word than containerization, where you are literally taking the services that you want to provide on a server and package those up with all of the dependencies, tool chains, libraries, and everything it needs right there in the container. That way, no matter how much the underlying operating system changes beneath it, the service that you are putting out on the internet or putting to anything from Jellyfin to a website or whatever, none of that needs to change, because the only thing it needs from the host operating system is the kernel.
And just the kernel, or maybe some other libraries or things.
Yeah,
I know that because of the underlying system being there, a container can be just enough environment for the thing that you want to run.
Yeah.
So they can be even more stripped down than maybe a specialized version of Linux.
I mean, that's what Alpine is. Alpine is just enough Linux to run things like Docker, or to be the platform that people use to containerize stuff up with. So, the little bits of Linux tend to be Alpine a lot of times, which is, really good, because Alpine is fast. Alpine can be very, very slim, and just enough. Everything about containerization is just enough, only what you need and nothing more.
Just to give you the basic interface tools to be able to access work with the containers, to access the containers, to have a file system to put your Docker Compose in, and then beyond that, everything that's being ran is containerized. And of course, opinions abound about containerization. Some people believe that it is lazy development because it means that all you got to do is develop this thing once, and then you don't have to keep up with distribution development. And I think that's
a good thing.
That's short-sighted.
I think that is an absolutely amazing thing, because it allows the admin in the case to choose what he wants. If that's Debian, if that's Ubuntu, if that's Fedora or Red Hat or whatever, the container runs exactly the same in every single on every single platform that you put it on, and that's the beauty of containerization. So I mean, what you were describing is short-sighted, right? Because
it's naive too, because it would be hard enough just keeping up with distribution development on one distribution. But if you're trying to develop something that's going to work on several different distributions, or even just to keep up with Fedora and Debian at the same time, would be an impossible task.
Yeah, well, keeping up with Debian 9 and Debian 11 at the same time is already a really, really hard task to do. Containerization, man.
That was a very interesting choice of the mentioning two distros, Debian and Fedora, because that was sort of my setup for the past year, running on Fedora and having Debian 11 in a DistroBox container, so that I can have access to the Debian repos, because as in natural sciences, biology and things like that, there's and even physics. I have never studied physics, but I know that a bunch of the packages in the Debian and Ubuntu repos are specialized tools for research, and some of them that are more biology related I actually used from within a Debian container. And I mentioned the DistroBox, but I didn't explain what it is if someone doesn't know. DistroBox is basically it's an automated system. You create a distro within a distro. It will pull a container image, one of the images that you would use for a Docker setup for a distro within a distro. So basically, it's like a CH root, as far as I know. You still use the host kernel, but you enter an environment just like you would enter a CH root. Is that a good comparison? I'm not sure.
But you can run more than one application within one container.
Yeah, and you can do that with Docker too.
Yeah. So basically, it's not as stripped down as running something like Nextcloud or.
But you don't have to have like a separate display server running too.
Yeah, what's interesting is I tested it out. I went into my Debian container I installed sooner, and I started it on my laptop on Fedora SPA, and I was expecting it to start through Xvalent, because I didn't expect the container system to figure out and connect to my Valent display server, but it started it.
That's fantastic.
But it did start it as Valent native. I know, because I opened XEyes and the eyes were moving, so. That's very interesting. And there's...
Did you open XEyes in the distro box, though?
No, I opened XEyes as it is installed on the whole system. I keep it around because sometimes I just check whether an application is Valent or Xvalent, because more and more things are running Valent native, and I'm really happy about that. And, there's a couple of new distributions that use a DistroBox at the backend, for example, Vanilla OS and Blend OS, which basically when you say that you want to install a package and you give it a flag, for example, AUR or DNF, it will use an Arch or a Fedora container, for example, in case of Vanilla OS, which is Ubuntu based. And I think the developer himself mentioned that you can even install Steam and play games while having Steam set up within a container, which is very interesting.
I mean, that's
fabulous.
It's the same idea behind running Steam in a Flatpak, right? I mean,
right.
That's the coolest thing about all the containerization, is that we're already using it, and likely you listening are probably already using it if you're using a Flatpak snap or app image, sort of app image. But yes,
but when they work so good that there's really no visible difference between running it that way, containerized, and running it on quote bare metal.
Yeah.
That's the fascinating thing to me, because some things do work better on some distributions than they do on others. Mm-hmm. So, a tool that allows you to just simply have the distro that you need to use, but yet have access to the package managers of other distros.
Yeah, I mean, think of a lot of the developers on slower moving distributions. Like, I mean,
right,
if you're having to use Red Hat or something like that, you for some reason don't have access to Fedora. I mean, that's what we're just getting done with on CentOS. CentOS 9 Stream is actually pretty usable when you add in the Flatpaks, right? Like it doesn't matter that the kernel is as long as it supports your hardware, right? It doesn't really matter what the kernel is or what everything around it is. Everything comes that you need in the Flatpak, so you just run whatever software you want, and the latest and greatest of that software makes things kind of nice.
I wonder if something like DistroBox would be like a better. I'll use Audacity as an example. That you install it with the Flatpak, and the real-time plugins don't work. And I wonder if you would have a better experience with that. I might have to try that.
I only use
DistroBox or something.
Well, I only use Audacity as a Flatpak because that's where I had the least amount of problems. 1 or 2 years ago, I had quite a bit of trouble getting Audacity to behave and share audio inputs and outputs with other applications. That was on, I think it was on both Arch and Void when I used the native package of Audacity. And when Audacity was recording, I couldn't also pass my microphone through Discord. So that was interesting.
What about the app image? Have you tried that?
No.
The app image works good, but you don't have any theming.
Yeah, I haven't really tried app images.
Windows 95,
altogether.
whatever.
That's fine with me, honestly, because if I'm in Audacity and I'm staring at Audacity, then the only thing I'm staring at is Audacity itself. So I'm not too worried that it doesn't integrate itself into the operating system if you're running the app image. So, that's fine. And like as we're using Audacity now, not looking at it. So even if it does not fit the theme, it's a tool. I don't need my hammer to match my screwdriver. It's okay that one is orange and the other blue. It does not bother me at all when it comes to
And of course,
like
app image is the officially
right.
supported.
And that's why I brought it up, just simply because you said something doesn't work, the real-time plugins don't work, but in the app image, I bet they would.
They work perfectly.
Exactly. So, but
the only recurring bug, as far as I can tell, is the lack of horizontal scroll bar. If you launch the application maximized, at least on Cinnamon here, well, actually on KDE Plasma too, on Arch, the same thing happens.
Really? So the scroll bar doesn't exist, or you can't scroll?
So you launch the application full screen, or maximized, and then you import the audio, and then you zoom in on it to where it stretches out past the edge of the screen, and then that should make a horizontal scroll bar appear, but it does not.
It's interesting.
If you unmaximize the window and then remaximize it, it appears.
Oh, okay. So it's just a mostly visual kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Because the way that I scroll in Audacity is hold shift and then scroll. And that'll move you left and right. So I very rarely use the bar down there. But if it's not there, I would need it sometimes.
I've just gotten used to launching it unmaximized and then importing and then zoom in a little bit and then maximize and then it appears as though it should.
Huh. And you're saying this is a problem with the app image or
Flatpak?
Yeah, Flatpak.
The Flatpak.
I just not looked at my Flatpak Audacity, and there was no scroll bar, so I minimize and maximize, and now it's there.
Yep.
That's funny.
And that's on Arch too, installed from the stock repo.
So it's a bug in Audacity, not a bug in Linux per se. Well, I guess it would be a Linux bug, right? I've never seen that on the other platforms either.
So what you're asking, Bill, is whether it would work better in DistroBox as opposed to a Flatpak. But
and I'm just talking about the real-time plugins.
Yeah,
if you installed it on there and then installed all the VST stuff,
yes, but why at that point why not just try what's the problem with the native package? Because what you get in DistroBox is a native package of one of the distributions you choose.
Yeah, and I'm still of the opinion, use the app image. I mean, it's there, it works, everything is good, just run the thing. As long as you're not on Ubuntu 22.04, right? Because they don't include the Fuse 2 modules that app image requires to run.
Well, you could try putting containers.
I've had that problem a couple times, actually.
Yeah.
Like, you got to go install Fuse. I'm like, what? What?
Yeah, I really don't get the stance of the developer for not talking to the distros. I mean, I get that it's fully independent and we should never really have to do any of that stuff. But, I mean, if you don't talk to the distros, they're going to do things like remove Fuse 2 because they don't need them. The only thing that would use them on their platform is app image. And if you're going to stick your head in the sand, what's going to happen? The exact same thing that Ubuntu just did. In 22.04. And now app images don't work. Until you add the Fuse modules, that is.
That's a strange way to think. Yeah.
Well, I think he takes that idea everywhere, right? The lack of an app image, built-in app image updater. You can build one in, and some applications do. Bitwarden is one of them. But there is no native way to do that, as far as I remember, and it's pretty much just a hard no for building that. If the app developer wants it, the app developer can put it in.
I think the app, as far as I can tell, they kind of see that as being a feature, because one of the claim to fame for app image is that you can have several different versions right there that you can launch.
Sure, and you can do that with Flatpak too, I think.
And I suppose.
Well, you can, for example, have FlatHub and FlatHub Beta, and then install maybe GIMP 2 point something from FlatHub, and then GIMP 3 beta from the FlatHub Beta repo. So that probably that could work.
I mean, maybe, yeah. I mean, I assume so. But
it's pretty robust as far as that goes, because if you install Audacity from the repo and then you install it from Flatpak, it'll literally show up with Flatpak in parentheses
on Mint. On Mint, that's a very Mint thing.
Is it a Mint thing? Okay.
Only some distros will differentiate between the two if once it gets stuck in the menu. I know DistroBox does handle that, so it will say like the AUR one or something like that.
Yeah. Good old AUR.
Yeah. It will say the name of the container. So if I have a container named Debian and I install Audacity within that, it will, and I export it to be listed in the application menu, it will say something like Audacity on Debian.
Yeah. There you go. That is pretty cool. I like that a lot. But as far as app image goes, my final word on that is their whole reason for existence, right, was to be able to run anywhere. Yeah, without that conversation, you're not running everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, your average Linux nerd will work all that out fairly easily, but, somebody that just needs to download this thing and run it,
Yeah, I think that's the majority of people, too. I think the majority of people don't care. I think it's nerds like us that like to sit here and talk about the difference between all the packaging, and how one benefit, a benefit of one is better than the implementation of another or something like that. Yeah. So I wonder how the conversation goes to someone that doesn't care about packaging. I do wonder that.
They just look at how well the program runs, and that's it.
Well, yeah, I mean, if it runs at all, I suppose they never really change it unless it's running terribly or anything.
What comes to mind is the backlash around the Firefox Snap startup time, which is,
I mean, that was long though.
That was.
I agree with that backlash. It was 12 seconds. 12 seconds in 2015 i5. I mean, not a super fast CPU by any stretch. But, I mean, 12 seconds to my browser, 12 seconds. And I know that it was only the first run, but I reboot a lot. So, I mean, it affected me probably more than most, but still, 12 seconds, man. They got it down to 8. And then now it's like 2, so it's fine now. But it was 12.
My problem with Snap is that a lot of people like to hate on Snap. But I like to Well, my personal problem with Snap is that I think it's a bit overcomplicated for a desktop because, Snap will be uncompressed and loaded into RAM so you can run it from RAM. But you can only have so much RAM on your system. So
Says
what
the
if
guy that's pulling in containers and then installing software in a container and then having that container put an icon in a menu. Complicated. This box is a bit more complicated than Snap.
I'm not talking about the method. I'm talking about how it works. Because if you install a Flatpak, you will have the programs and the runtimes on the disk. If you install a Snap, you will have the Snap archive. And every time you want to run it after a reboot, it will have to be loaded to memory, and then you run it from memory. But what if there's not enough space in memory? So let's say you're
told to get more memory.
Yeah, because if you run the Firefox Snap, it loads into memory. Use it. You maybe close it and use some other programs, and maybe they fill up your memory. So the next time you want to run Firefox again, even though you haven't rebooted, you will have to wait again for it to be loaded into RAM, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But in case of a Flatpak, you don't have to load it into RAM because it's not compressed to begin with. So I'm sorry.
Well, you still have to load it into RAM. You still definitely have to load it into RAM.
Not just the components that you are using, right? But with Snap, because on disk it's compressed. When you uncompress it, it all goes straight to RAM. Or maybe so does
a Flatpak, right? When you run the Flatpak, all the libraries and everything that you're using to launch that particular program does get loaded into RAM. So the end result is the same between a Flatpak and a Snap. It's just that Snaps compress on disk and Flatpaks do not. So, I mean, the uncompression is the only difference.
Yeah, so maybe I phrased it wrong. I wanted to get to what my problem with Snaps is being the compression. It makes sense on a server, but I don't really like the compression aspect on a desktop application.
Yeah, well, I tend to use Snap on the server. That's pretty much where I use Snap. That's the really only place I use Snap.
Yeah,
and so startup time doesn't really bother me there.
Yeah, and I actually started considering using Snap as well because I'm thinking about getting into self-hosting stuff, and as of recording this, I will be buying an Intel NUC, one of those mini PCs tomorrow, used, secondhand.
I go with the i3 on that one because it's got a better instruction set. Like it'll handle more things like encryption. I would go with the i3 because you had a list. You put one of those in the chats.
But since then I found one that is a couple years older, i7.
Oh, you cheated. Yeah. There was an option that wasn't on the list. I see.
Yeah, okay. I found it's a 6th generation i7, so it's a bit older.
Oh,
but in terms of benchmarks, the overall score is better than the 11th generation i3, which, fun fact, is the same 11th generation i3.
There's like 6 or 8 cores on that thing, man.
Yeah, I have in my laptop, which is a 2-core 4-thread. It's the i3 1115G, and I don't know what the 6th gen i7 is, but the single core performance is worse than mine, but it's a 4-core 8-thread, so the overall score is better. So, and since I want to try things like virtualization and Proxmox and containers, one of the things I want to set up is Nextcloud. So it's a bunch of stuff that's adjacent to what we talked about today. So.
Not a huge fan of that Nextcloud Snap.
Oh, that's why it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, that's why
it's easier, but
well, I don't do much with my Nextcloud. My Nextcloud is for storage and notes,
if you're just going to use it one maybe 2 people, but I think if you're gonna run the document server, because if you're gonna run like for Mintcast and by extension this show, the document server is a separate Docker image running, and because I tried running that like the built-in way, and when you're collaborating with people all over the world, it falls flat on its face. So I think the Snap is fine for 1 or 2 people using it. I wouldn't rely on it for a production environment.
That sounds. I don't suppose Nextcloud actually wants that to be the case. That might be something you need to bring up to them.
It might be
because they're
but also
first party
I think
package. They package the Snap themselves, as far as I understand.
Yeah, I don't know if they want people using the because it's the built-in code server is what I'm talking about. That just if it's just one or two people using it, it's not too bad. But we were trying to use it as a drop-in replacement for Google Docs, and it just wasn't holding up in its current form. Now I don't know. You might be able to run the snap and then install the separate Docker container for your own code server, and that might work too. I didn't try that, but I have not had a single problem with the bare metal install.
I'm a fan of HedgeDoc for doing like any kind of documentation or collaborative documentation.
Oh, Markdown and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, it's hands down. It's lightweight and it works very well. And the only thing you really have to learn is Markdown, and you really don't, because it's got all the little text editor things across the top, just like a word processor would.
Yeah, I was looking at that too, because I remember you bringing that up, and I looked at that and I thought, yeah, that's fine for me. That's fine for one or two other people on the show, but I'm not sure everybody was going to be able to.
You just got to push the button and then let them hate you for a little bit, and then everybody will get used to it.
It's either you keep up or.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. It's been running great though, ever since I've set it up. So I haven't felt the need to change anything.
Yeah. Wait, so you're not using the snap, because I think you mentioned at first you went for the snap, and that's.
I tried it at first, and it I don't know. There was just weirdness to it. It had to make things happen. You had a whole different set of instructions than the officially supported documentation laid out.
Right.
So
what are you using now, Docker?
No, it's bare metal.
Oh, you're
installed
brave.
from scratch.
Ooh wee! What happens when you got to upgrade, man?
It upgrades. It has.
No, I mean
we've been running it for
your operating system.
It seems I've had one upgrade since I've installed it, and it seems to work great.
Okay.
On what distro, in what package format?
Ubuntu server.
Oh, so it's wait. Ubuntu is a static distro. So do some packages still get feature updates like Nextcloud then?
Not really, no. Like your PHP is not going to change or anything.
Nextcloud is kind of installed the way you do WordPress, where you download it directly from the website.
So it's not apt install Nextcloud.
No.
Well, you apt install things like MariaDB and PHP, and then all the PHP modules that you need to run everything on it.
And so,
but that's the only thing that the distribution is.
And you were saying that you've upgraded from like 2004 to 2204 or something?
Correct.
Wow. And and nothing broke.
Nothing broke.
Wow.
Because I mean, you're just getting new Apache, Apache too. You're getting new Apache, you're getting new MariaDB, and you're getting new PHP.
Well, it's good to know that the newer versions of those things are still backwards compatible with whatever Nextcloud is using behind the scenes. Yeah. That's cool.
I don't even.
And then Nextcloud itself has its own upgrading mechanism. So
that kind of handles itself. It's the other bits, more like MariaDB and PHP, that kind of scare me during an upgrade.
Yeah.
I know that I want to set up Nextcloud somehow. I'm not even sure what distro I'm going to put on it yet. I think I have about 5 contenders. Debian.
Do it on
Debian.
Arch. Yeah. Do it on Arch. Let me. Do it on Arch using containers, so that when Arch inevitably explodes, it's actually a fairly simple process to just pull down the new containers, because you're using Docker Compose or something like that, likely. And then you just back up your data, and then make sure the data is in the same spot as it was before after you reinstall. Do a Docker Compose up, and you're golden, man. It pulls down everything.
Set up your own email server using Arch.
Nope. I'm out.
Yep, do it.
I stick
because Arch will give you the up-to-date version of Docker Compose.
Self-hosting email is a naughty word, man. No.
I got into that mail cow. I started playing around with that, which is basically just a curl script.
Yeah.
So that's breaking all kinds of rules. But you go curl this script, and it sets up like 9 containers but it needs Docker Compose 2.0, which you don't get with. You can Cowboy install it.
That's how I do it. I don't care. I just chuck it in user bin.
And there's a curl script for that too.
Yeah, no, I don't even bother. I just go to GitHub and get the latest one and chuck it in user bin and call it a day. Like, I just need Docker Compose, so that's how I'm going to get it. I think it's packaged now, though. I think Ubuntu packages one. But it's not two, like you said. Yeah,
it's not. Yeah.
So that's how I just yeet it into user bin, run it.
What I've been using as a makeshift,
we're crazy, man.
Yeah.
I've been using as a sort of makeshift home server is my old laptop with Debian stable on it. So when I finally get this Intel NUC, I was thinking I would put either Debian or Ubuntu it, or maybe NixOS, because it does have a server use and it has convenient ways of setting up things like Nextcloud. But I've also looked into Proxmox and TrueNAS, because I will probably end up connecting a few hard drives to it. But I'm not sure if I need TrueNAS, because I don't really want to set up a complicated RAID. Well, I say that it's complicated because I haven't tried it yet. Maybe it's simple. So
I think it's complicated, and that's why you shouldn't do it.
Okay.
It's a simple setup process. What I'm saying is, you better have backup disks. Like whatever size fails, you better have backup disks for it, because you're gonna run. You're gonna end up in a degraded state, Bill. You're gonna end up in a degraded state, and it's not gonna be good.
Those tools like TrueNAS and Open Media Vault. I used to use Open Media Vault, and that's kind of like taking the TrueNAS approach and putting a Debian backend on it. And you can use the Proxmox kernel and everything like that, so you can get proper ZFS or ZFS support on it. But you end up with a whole lot of stuff that you really, the first thing you want to do is identify what you want that server to do.
Everything.
And
that's the thing I don't know yet. I know that I want to have two things. One, Nextcloud. Two, having an instance of Debian stable. So first, I was thinking maybe I should just install Proxmox and then have a Debian system running on top of that. I have a friend who mentioned he tried Home Assistant OS, which has a one-click deployment for a bunch of container stuff like Docker, like Nextcloud, but I'm not really interested in the smart home management aspect of it. And then he recommended TrueNAS. But the thing about TrueNAS is that its main focus is on having your disks set up in a RAID, or at least pooling disks. And I'm not sure if I would want to do RAID 1, but I see that RAID 0 is basically distributing data across two disks. So if I have two identically sized 2 terabyte disks, so that would turn it into a 4 terabyte pool. But I would like to be
Striping.
But I would like these disks to be usable when they're not connected to the server, so just a regular hard drive. So I would probably end up setting up the internal drive in the NUC as a permanent storage, and then just connect just connect the external drives to it for extra space. But
we're gonna have to stop you because I know Bill's got to get out of here, and I want to leave some suspense for the next episode.
We're gonna get into self-hosting on the next show. Spoiler alert.
No one should do it ever.
Well, we sort of already did in just a little teaser prequel.
Just put everything you own on the cloud.
Yeah, you'll be grand. Get Google space and just let Google handle it for you.
Google Drive. Put all your photos.
Yeah. Everything, your whole life. Put it out there, because Google is a good steward of your data.
Well done keeping a straight face there. I don't know. There's arguments that maybe they are, but
they're not.
That's an argument for another day.
No. The reason I could keep a straight face is that I was too busy thinking about a joke to make in connection with this. But the best I could do is, if Apple still had iLife, then I could say that if you keep everything in iCloud, that's your iLife.
It is.
Hey. All right, kids, we're going to get out of here. Email the show, linuxotc@proton.me. It doesn't roll off the tongue. comment directly on the website. That seems to be a couple of people have made use of that. Right now, we've just got
it's really
a
just
Discord
me.
channel.
I'm actually the one dropping all the That's me. Yeah.
We got a Discord channel. Go join that. Let us know one way or the other where you think we would have the best social media presence, because we could just set stuff up willy-nilly all over the place, but I really would rather just focus on one or two things.
The fans want a Facebook. That's what they want.
Yeah, we want Facebook groups. Well, that's what Three Fat Truckers is on, and it makes me like
hurts my heart
a little bit every time. It hurts. But anyway, we're going to be back in a fortnight. We're going to talk about self-hosting. We're going to have a lot of fun. Until that time, I've been Bill.
And you still are, and I'm still Norbert.
You said that last time.
And I'm Leo.
Oh, I'm recycling jokes, sorry.